Hello, everybody, and welcome to Squibbler's Wednesday webinars. Today, we're going to be talking about how to craft passion, mastering the art of writing romantic scenes. In this webinar, you're going to learn the foundation of romantic tension. We'll talk about sensuality versus sexuality, how you can find a balance between the two. We'll look at a couple of examples of powerful writing from professional romance writers, and then we'll take a look at a few mistakes to avoid as you're working on your romance scenes. So there is a difference between romance and physical attraction. And physical attraction is primarily biological and immediate. It's based on visual and sensory cues, how we feel when we look at someone that we find attractive. It's focused mostly on physical appearance and chemistry and pheromones. It can have immediate responses in the brain's reward centers, and you can feel it instantly on meeting someone if you're attracted to them. Romance, on the other hand, is a little more complex and it develops over time. It's going to involve emotional connection and intimacy. It's not just a physical connection. Romance also involves shared values and interests. There's a mutual respect and understanding with people in romantic situations. There's also an investment in each other's well-being. You do care for each other and want to grow together. There's also a desire for a deeper knowledge of the person. And there are elements of idealization and heightened emotional experiences as well. The most fulfilling relationships combine both elements. There is a romantic and a physical attraction. It has the excitement of the physical attraction you feel and the depth and security that you feel with a romantic connection. So there are some ways that psychology and romance work together. And in this section, we'll be talking about characters, how the psychology of romance affects your characters. There are different types of characters in romances. One is the secure character. And this character is already comfortable with intimacy, but is still interesting when they're paired with someone with a different attachment or romantic style. So it's kind of like the odd couple. You have two people with two completely different worldviews who could fall in love. There's also the anxious character. The anxious character in romance creates tension because they fear abandonment and they need reassurance. So they're often, anxious and tense about getting into a relationship. There are avoidant characters. These characters provide compelling arcs as they learn to lower their walls of resistance and they trust in love. And that does take development throughout the narrative. And there are disorganized characters. These offer complex internal conflicts as they simultaneously want and reject a connection. So you also want to map your romantic plot to mirror the brain's chemical progression, perhaps. You don't necessarily need to do this, but since we do tend to meet people and fall in love and then develop our relationships over time, it may be something worth pursuing in your romantic scenes. So there may be the initial attraction phase. This is where the dopamine and norepinephrine are really active in the brain. And this creates those exciting first encounters that there's a heightened awareness, a lot of sensory development discussion. Then next comes the bonding phase where oxytocin is released in the brain. And this is going to develop intimate moments of vulnerability and trust building. And finally, you have the attachment phase where the vasopressin and serotonin stabilizes in the brain. And this is where the passion of first interactions is going to develop into deeper commitments. There are also some ways that romance affects your readers, so you may want to keep this in mind as well. These are things to aim for. Romance readers do respond to emotional resonance. These are those moments that mirror universal psychological experiences. We're interested in seeing how people respond when they're in love. We also are interested in experiencing vicarious vulnerability. This is how we can safely experience emotional risks through characters. You get this catharsis of experiencing something from a different perspective, and it's safe for you as a reader. There's also cognitive satisfaction. This is the resolution of psychological tensions and contradictions, where at the end of reading a romance, you're satisfied with what you've read. It feels resolved, and it feels like a really good ending for the characters. Romance readers also respond to relationship templates. These models that they see in books can be a connection for how to heal past wounds, how to develop future relationships, things to avoid, and so forth. As far as your characterization for romance, you might want to look for complementary traits and values for your protagonists. You want to create meaningful conflict and obstacles, something that's out of the ordinary and not a cliche. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. And establish a shared history or experience. A lot of romances begin in office settings because that mirrors life. This is where we usually meet people. Either we work with them or we go to school with them. So that's something to consider as well. It's a shared history or experience. There is a structure to romances as well. You do want to think about your psychological bears, those inner conflicts that are going to prevent your characters from fully embracing love. And these are more important in many ways in romance than exterior conflicts. You want to think about contrasting love languages. This can create miscommunication and growth opportunities. And it's a way to delve into your own relationships and think about which ones were successful and why, and which ones failed and why. Perhaps you had a different love language as well. You might consider identity integration challenges as well as you're creating your structure. This is how characters are going to incorporate romantic love into the way that they see themselves. And then there are also validation gaps. These are the specific ways that characters need to feel seen that other people may not have provided for them. So you do want emotional vulnerability in your romance. Heightened sensory awareness is something that happens, especially early on when the attraction is more physical. And in Squibbler, you can use the describe feature to heighten this sensory writing. You also want to talk about a subtext coming to the surface where, subtle flirting or playful arguments at the office are going to turn into something more developed into your romance. It's also important to aim for authenticity to character development. Don't just have your character do something to further the plot. It should be consistent with their character. And the timing should be meaningful. The relationship should be believable, credible. The development should be timely enough that we believe it. So another thing that you want to aim for in your romances is building tension. This is a technique. And so you want to craft scenes where characters have to touch each other for practical reasons. So maybe they're teaching a skill, maybe they need medical attention, or they're in tight quarters, something where they are in close proximity to each other. And this is going to trigger disproportionate physical and emotional responses in your characters. So you want to think about things like racing heartbeats, lingering warmth, momentary inability to speak, and then have your characters dismiss or rationalize these actions. This is going to create a really nice disconnect between the body and mind that builds towards an eventual recognition of feelings. And again, this is something where you can tap into your relationships, past and present, and how you felt in the early days of that relationship. You also want to establish clear personal boundaries for your characters and then methodically break them down in specific ways based on their vulnerabilities. So you might think about someone as a character who doesn't discuss family, who starts to slowly share their family stories. One who maintains a physical distance is going to begin to stand closer. Track these small surrenders of established patterns to show how the relationship is developing beneath the denial that we usually see on the surface. You also want to think about private and public personas. There is a stark contrast between how characters behave together in private versus group settings. So try to develop some quiet and intimate moments where they are going to connect deeply. And you could follow these by scenes where they maintain a difference or indifference publicly. This is going to gradually increase the strain of this performance until it becomes unsustainable. You want to also have your characters acknowledge romantic feelings, and they're going to channel these into safer emotional expressions. They may be irritated, competitive, have protected instincts, or exaggerated formality. So, as the story progresses, make these substitutions transparent to readers, while the characters themselves remain oblivious. And that's a really nice form of dramatic irony that's going to heighten the anticipation for their eventual realization. So some examples of techniques. This is from Emily Henry's Beach Read. There is a powerful scene in this novel that showcases emotional vulnerability between the protagonists. So after maintaining a competitive relationship as rival writers, this couple, their walls are going to crumble on a nighttime beach bonfire. January discusses with Augustus how her father has betrayed their family multiple times. He's had multiple affairs. And then this has shattered her belief in happy endings. She doesn't believe it, even though she writes about romance. And she confesses that she feels like a fraud, that she can't really write about love with a deep understanding because she doesn't believe or trust in it. And Augustus, who is once her rival, is also guarded and cynical. And he doesn't judge her for this discussion, but he also reveals his own vulnerability and shares parts of his troubled past that shaped his own dark literary perspective. And so we could see this development of their interest in each other and their willingness to open up and their relationship as well. What makes this moment so effective in this book is one, it's the setting. You know, you have intimacy with an isolated beach, you have firelight, you have nighttime. The vulnerability that the characters express are specific to their wounds. It's really compelling that one of the writers writes romance, but she does not really know how to express herself romantically. The sharing is gradual. It's reciprocal. It's not just an information dump. It's believable and authentic for the characters. Both of the characters also are opening themselves up, and they're willing to risk rejection here of who they really are. So this moment really does show us as a reader how they change, how they see each other. Another example is from Sally Thorne's The Hating Game. This book is a masterclass of slow burn tension between two workplace rivals, Lucy Hutton and Joshua Templeman. Their journey is going to reveal several key slow burn techniques. First of all, they're in forced proximity with maintained boundaries. They're in a work environment. They sit at facing desks. They have to interact daily, and they have to be professional. Their warfare with each other is stare contests, passive aggressive comments about each other's work, and silent judging each other. But there's an electric undercurrent beneath for their professional interactions. And quite a few American comedies, and I think some British comedies as well, use this same setting and this kind of slow burn tension in the workplace, because we do have to remain professional in these settings. So throughout the novel, both of the characters really misinterpret their own responses. So it is dramatic irony, and the reader feels like they're watching, this scene play in front of them, where the actors don't really fully understand their own behavior. Lucy channels her own attraction into elaborate fantasies about Joshua's downfall, and Josh disguises his attention and care as criticism and competition. So both mistake their physical awareness for antagonism initially. A pivotal scene in the book is when Lucy falls sick at work, and then Joshua takes her home and takes care of her. And when he touches her forehead to check her temperature, this becomes a charged moment when they're finally touching one another. Lucy becomes really hyper aware of his touch, the way he smells, his proximity, and that's a stark contrast for what they have to keep up in the office place, this practical reason for contact. And she has an overwhelming physical response to his concern and his touch. What makes this a slow burn scene and why it's so effective is how each interaction between the pair gradually reveals the misinterpretation of their relationship. And it also gives a plausible, authentic reason for the characters to resist acknowledging their attraction until the tension becomes unbearable. So I'm going to read directly from The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, so you can check out some other techniques that are really helpful for romance. And this one has quite a few strategies that you might emulate in your own writing. He pulls her close and kisses her like he's never kissed her before. There is a sudden stillness to everything, as if the world itself has stopped moving. Even the stars above them freeze. Celia's hands are in his hair, and his arms are around her waist, and neither of them can tell whether their eyes are closed or not. The only thing they're aware of is each other. So we kind of have this magic ingrained in this scene where this couple is, they feel like they're in the atmosphere among the stars. There's transcendent language. Everything freezes for them as the lovers come together. And there's this buildup. We're watching step by step as they're getting together physically and also psychologically in this scene. So some other ways to approach your romantic scenes, there's sensuality and sexuality, and neither is incorrect depending on what you're aiming for and what you feel your audience would be interested in. But for most romances, you want to find the right balance unless you're moving towards erotica. And there are some techniques for writing subtle sensuality. And those things are small touches, the touch of a hand accidentally, or, a hand across the top of another hand. There are gestures, there are glances with each other. You can write chemistry with the five senses, and of course, you can do this with the describe function to heighten passages using sight and sound and touch and so forth. There's also the meaningful pause. This is when a character freezes up when they see their love interest, and perhaps they can't talk, and the dialogue will pause. You can also use the AI in Scribbler, the rewrite function, as you're revising your work with the custom function to ask the AI to create more romance in those scenes that you have already written. So here's another example, and note the pregnant pause in this one. She had rehearsed 1,000 times to this moment, planned the perfect words, imagined how her voice would sound confident yet tender when he finally kissed her. But when he actually knelt before her, asking if she could ever love him, she couldn't speak, not a single word. So there is this tension here created by this pause. There are a few mistakes to avoid. Cliches and stereotypes can really bog down your writing, and we'll take a look at what that means in the next few slides. Consent and modern relationship dynamics are a must in this day and age. We're not, doing the bodice ripping stuff anymore, and those tropes that are the older style of writing. You want to avoid when romance becomes problematic. Avoid perfect characters as well and perfect relationships. Avoiding these cliches and problematic issues is going to keep the romantic conflict authentic. So some cliches that you should avoid is love at first sight without any depth to it. It shouldn't just be someone seeing somebody else pass by and falls in love with that person. That's just an older style of writing that isn't very believable anymore. It's not credible. Another one is the big misunderstanding. This has been a trope on film and in books for a long time as well, where there's an underlying misunderstanding about each other, but that's been overdone. So I would recommend avoiding that as well if you can. Definitely avoid the perfect, flawless characters. We're interested in what makes people unique. We're interested in seeing people make mistakes and learn from them. So your character should have flaws. Absolutely avoid toxic behavior that's framed as romantic. This was really a big part of novels written in the 2000s, the early 2000s, where even in young adult books, you'd see possessiveness, jealousy framed as something romantic. And it's not really believable. You also want to avoid that magical epilogue fix where everything is somehow suddenly resolved in the last chapter or in the epilogue to your book, where you're just kind of summing up and they lived ever happily ever after. They bought the nice house with the white picket fence. They had 4 kids, 2 dogs, and so forth. For authenticity, you want to make sure that you're not just manufacturing external drama instead of internal conflict. Romance is more interested in characters and how people are responding to each other than it is external events like, they would have fallen in love, but he had to move away and so forth. It's more important how people respond to these things. You want to avoid creating easily resolvable conflicts. Things in life are complicated and difficult, and they're not always easily resolved in a page or two. So make these things challenging for your characters. Avoid having your characters be inconsistent just because you want to push your plot forward. Romance is really largely character driven. It's important that the characters are consistent and believable, because otherwise, it's not worth reading. It's not fun for your reader. You also want to avoid resolving your conflict too easily or too quickly. That also has to be believable and credible, and it should be consistent with your characters. So on Discord, we will have, as we upload this webinar, an exclusive worksheet for you that will help you highlight your own romance in your writing, to help you write better scenes, craft better tension in your romantic scenes as well. So you can check that out in the resources library on Discord when this webinar is uploaded there. So in this webinar, we talked about the foundation of romantic tension. We looked at sensuality and sexuality and talked a little bit about finding a balance. We looked at a couple of examples of writing from romantic authors already that are published, and we took a look at some mistakes to avoid as well. I hope you enjoyed this session. Thanks as always for joining us, and we will see you next week.